Hello, Darklings. It's your ghostly governess, here to explore the facts and the fantasy behind all things creepy, freaky, and eeky. Today's lesson, the definition of magic, is foundational to the supernatural and the paranormal, so it's one we'll refer back to often. If it's your first time here or you've worked your way back to it to catch up, welcome. You know what? Welcome even if you've been here before, too. Anything related to the otherworldly eventually involves magic, both with and without a K. So, what is magic and why the bloody spelling difference? For most of us, magic, without a K, is amusing. Magicians turn their skill of fast hands, rigged objects, and love of flashy costumes into a full on career. We know everything they achieve on stage is explainable with special equipment, twins, and audience plants, mirrors, and even just misdirection, which is why what they do is called an illusion or a trick. Popular use and some very good PR at the right times made illusions, tricks, and magic, again, no K, synonymous by the 20th century. But we're talking about magic with a K. If you've never spelled it that way, don't worry. It's largely a neo-pagan distinction that has very little acknowledgement in the academic or research branches on the paranormal and supernatural, not to mention the real world. It simply acts as a distinction between what a magician does and the rites, rituals, and spells of a neo-pagan. There is no difference in how it's pronounced, and most places don't even bother to note the difference. I do here to stop some of the comments that will pop up if I didn't. You're welcome. Magic as we mean it here has a few definitions. I already gave one, the rites, rituals, and spells of neo pagans. Another is science that isn't understood yet, which I like, but means that most theoretical and quantum physics work falls under the category of magic. And saying that gets them all mad. The better definition is from the late 14th century: the art of influencing or predicting events and producing marvels using hidden natural forces. Put another way, magic is the manipulation of the natural world or natural forces. And for the vast majority of human history, that was its purpose, pure and simple. Magic gave humanity a sense of control in a world they did not always understand and certainly could not manipulate or control. For most of humanity's existence, magic was not good or evil. It simply was a skill or tool, and the use and perception varied on culture. Generally, anyone could learn to practice some magic. The rituals and instructions were passed around like influencer product pushes. We still have some simplistic magical rituals with us, though now they're labeled as superstitions. Ever had the cootie shot? That's a magical ritual. Do you carry a charm or wear something specific because it brings you luck? That's a magical ritual. Even something like checking your horoscope for advice is a type of magic. These are harmless in your day to day life. The charm gives you comfort or confidence. When you were little, the cootie shot made it so you could continue to play with other children without fear. The horoscope, even if it's just a lark, makes you wary or keeps you looking out for signs you weren't looking for before. Not even knowing it, you attempted to manipulate forces to your benefit. It working is not a factor. So, everyone, everywhere, in every nation, ethnicity, culture, and group has some kind of magical thinking or beliefs that require no special skills or training to be part of. It's a universality of humanity, with only specifics altering from one group or culture to another. Equally universal is that some people are innately better at manipulating the natural world. They go by many names: wise folk, cunning folk, shaman, sorcerer, seer, wizard, oracle, witch, magi, mage, and in some cases, much to the chagrin of the more religious, priest. And depending on the time, location, and size of the civilization in question, the magic users had a great deal of influence and were in a great deal of danger. By either birth, education, or contractual obligation, these special people understood how to use magic for their own or the community's benefit better, though sometimes that benefit was trying to use it to destroy others. Regardless of the title of the user, there were typically two broad, very broad, categories magic fell into. And no, I don't mean black or white magic. Magic itself was and is a neutral force. It was more often the user or victim who defined it as good or evil. The categories are sympathetic and symbiotic. Harmful or helpful, healing or hurting, all magic rites and rituals are based in one of these two categories. So, what's the damn difference? Sympathetic magic is actually still with us in many ways. The basic tenet is that caring for a part is caring for the whole. Equally, hurting a part is hurting the whole. This is the founding logic, so to speak, for the Christmas tree. By bringing in one tree and caring for it, the whole forest survives the winter. You take care of a part, and the whole is protected. All sympathetic magic follows this pattern. A part links to a whole, and what happens to one part happens to another. The example of the tree is benign, almost sweet, but when carried to its logical conclusion, this also applies to humans. Hair, teeth, finger, or toenails of humans are also part of sympathetic magic. Images are included, though they're a bit of a late addition, and it's largely agreed that images work best for magic on someone if you have some of their hair or a tooth or a finger or toenail. So remember that the next time you think about not tipping your stylist or manicurist. Not only can they leave your DNA at random crime scenes, but they can use your part to make your whole life hell. The most famous example is the so called voodoo doll, or as it's known in the West, the poppet. After making a rough image of a human figure out of usually cloth and straw, you add whatever part of the person you took or received. Now, anything you do to that doll, good or bad, will carry over to the person. Doing something kind to it, like tucking it into a bed or saying sweet things, will carry over to the person you intend. But that's not the first thing people jump to when you say voodoo doll or puppet. They think of things like stabbing the doll with pins, letting a dog tear it apart, or even letting the doll catch fire in the microwave. Versions of what you do to the doll will happen to the person. So if you've ever tried to hurt your ex through a doll like this and it didn't work, you may have missed the key step, putting a part of the ex into the doll. This is why those who are just a little suspicious or paranoid dispose of things like hair in a very specific way, so it can't be used against them. Sympathetic magic says that what happens to the part happens to the whole. And as you can see from our examples, that principle is neither good nor bad, but can be used for both. The other category is symbiotic magic. This comes into particular focus for making charms, potions, and even rudimentary healing concepts. This type of magic suggests that the meaning or appearance of something tells you how it will influence something else. With charms, symbols, and meanings, they are culturally specific. In many indigenous American and Northern European groups, the stag represents strength or protection. So those who need strength may carry a charm in the shape of a stag or a piece of antler with them. Those who want to enhance their role as protectors may wear stag antlers or mount them on their wall. Or they're lying about hitting a deer and will get away with it so long as no one looks at the front of their truck. The stag is the symbol, and it brings certain aspects to a place or person. Colors also have part in symbiotic magic. In Western based neo-pagan beliefs, the color black absorbs negative energy. If you want to ensure that those who enter your home don't bring bad vibes or negativity, paint your entryway frames black. White, by the by, repels negative energy. If you're looking to keep negative forces away in the first place, instead of neutralizing them, go with white frames and doors. But again, these are specific to Western cultures. In other areas of the world, use red as the color of protection. Stones, metal, and plants are also pulled into symbiotic magic, but not in ways you might expect. If you're at all into old fairy tales or folklore, you know that iron is a useful tool to keep away types of creatures like fae or gnomes. If you play Pokemon, this belief is part of why steel type moves are super effective against fairy types. You're welcome. Neo pagan beliefs attribute certain skills and abilities to different plants, metals, and stones. If you want protection, plant some oak trees, which, let's face it, is just generally a good idea for the world entirely. But the oak represents protection or depending on your specific neo-pagan structure, wisdom. If you're doing a ritual to bring about justice, include jade. However, this level of association is fairly new. Earlier forms of symbiotic magic looked a bit different. If you wanted your breath to smell pretty, you sucked on a gemstone, assuming you could afford one. This is a type of symbiotic magic. You're hoping to transfer the beauty of the gem to your breath. Let me just say now, toothpaste works much better. Please don't suck on gemstones for oral health. Organized religion didn't escape this either. Medieval Catholic priests wore amethyst because it was believed to keep you sober. Again, for my own legal well being, let me say amethyst does not counter the effects of alcohol. Please drink responsibly. Also, wear amethyst responsibly, a little goes a long way. Bodily health was a major focus of symbiotic magic. And because in most rural areas, your local magic user was also your healer, it's not a surprise to find it in almost everywhere in folk healing. We're looking mostly at Europe for this part of the discussion, but examples can be found in nearly every culture. Certain plants were given healing properties to the body because of either where they grew or what they looked like. Usnea is a type of moss that grows inside or on the skull of humans left unburied. It grows a lot of other places, but if you found it in or on a skull, you knew you had the right stuff. Because it grew inside the skull, people thought it could heal head problems. It was used in headache or migraine cures and certain types of mental illnesses and epilepsy. And for those of you saying, didn't they think that was possession? No, not really. Epilepsy and most mental illnesses were not caused by demonic interference, particularly if it started in childhood. They still didn't know the right cause, but they did know it wasn't usually diabolical, which, let's face it, is a great step forward. But back to symbiotic magic and its part in healing. What it came down to was, particularly with plants, if a part resembled a part of the human body, that part could be used to treat ailments related to the body. If a flower or leaf resembled a nose, it was used for colds or runny noses. If it looked like an eye, that's where it went. This is symbiotic magic. You're taking traits of one thing and using it to bring out those same traits in another situation. You use moss that grows inside a human skull to cure headaches. You carry around the image of a stag for protection. These are all types of symbiotic magic. Now, you'd assume that if a treatment had no effect, word would spread and people would figure out, yeah, that doesn't always work. And in some cases, that was true. However, we have to remember a few realities about the world. First off, remember that healing like this was largely found in Europe. And even with empires like Rome and Charlemagne and the Moorish conquest of Spain, Europe spent most of their history trailing behind everyone else in terms of sanitation and medical education. And even outside of bottom of the barrel Europe, infections and illnesses could spread very quickly, making solid proof of a treatment's success or failure inconclusive. No one could be sure without lots of data, and sadly, that takes lots of time and lives to sort out. We also can't forget the power of the placebo effect. Sometimes just being told this will work does have an effect. Since the placebo effect can only be determined if patients are divided in a control study, we really have no way of knowing why some of these treatments continued to be used even though we know they had no effect. As we've seen in this lesson, there are two broad categories of magic. They take on many forms and cover a wide array of human concerns and needs. It gave people a sense of control in a world where they rarely, if ever, had any. Magic itself was neither good or evil. That came down to the individual user or even the ritual. While most people knew of a small charm or rite, actually controlling it was often in the hands of specially born or trained users that went by different titles. It was the ability, or more accurately, the attempt, to control natural forces through supernatural means. Anything that wasn't that, like guessing cards or making a person disappear and reappear in another place, are better called tricks or illusions. That's it for this lesson, Darklings. Your assignment is to like and subscribe, and join me again for the next one.